Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Sjaelland in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are very solid all round. They were one of the first Danish craft breweries that I ever encountered when I was back home in Scotland, and in more recent times I would say that they've been focusing on kind of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs and fruity juicy sour beers. But yeah, they still do a number of the kind of more odd things as well, if you like, the black IPAs, the imperial stouts, and you know, the West Coast IPAs and stuff like that, but a lot less frequently than they used to, in fact. But yeah, the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've had from these guys many times before. It's one that I know they can do very well. This is apparently one of their best ones that they do, in fact, in this particular style category, and it's also one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden too. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to the western side of Sjaelland, which incidentally is the easternmost of the main Danish islands, the one on which Copenhagen sits, but we're going to go over to the west of that island to Svinninge, and that means of course that we're going to have a look at another beer from Toul. So this particular beer is called Cryo Out Loud. It comes in at 10.3% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy imperial triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Lokalt och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget for June of 2023, and as I've mentioned to you on the channel before, in addition to the local Swedish beers that are released during these releases, we do get a few Danish and Norwegian things. It just kind of depends where you are in the country, but of course I tend to order them, so I get a little bit of everything from all over the place in the order. But yeah, as I say, 10.3% New England triple IPA. We've had one or two triple IPAs from Total before, West Coast and New England if I remember correctly, and they've always been pretty damn good. But this is a very highly rated beer. I think I had a rating of like 4.2 when I checked it out on Untappd earlier, and yeah, if it's got that kind of rating and it's from Total, it's probably going to be pretty good. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it has in store for us. Always nice to return to Total. So yeah, we'll do this. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Total before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So yeah, just go into the homepage, use the little search bar, put your hometown, state, county, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. And yeah, you'll find this one in the Danish playlist along with many other things. I love reviewing the Danish beers here, but you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then to tell you a wee bit about Toul once again then. So, Toul was founded back in about 2010, if I remember correctly, by Tobias Emil Jensen and Tore Gainter, who were former students of Mikael Bjergso, who is of course the boss of Mikkeller. So originally they were brewing with him in their school kitchens back in around 2005. Of course, he used to be their physics and maths teacher, and they continued to homebrew together until about 2010 when they founded Toul officially, which in English means two beers, Toul in Danish. But when Mikkel heard that his former students were still brewing, he insisted that they do a collaboration brew together, and it was this that became the first commercial Toul beer. Just it was simply called double IPA, like IIPA. But they very quickly built a strong reputation for themselves because of the quality of their beer, and with the help of Mikkeller, they managed to distribute their beers worldwide from very early on. As you know, back in this time, Copenhagen had a really kind of cutting-edge beer scene, very, very thriving. Evil Twin, Mikkeller, Toul, Amar Brewkus, to name but a few at the time. But as is the case with Mikkeller, these guys were originally gypsy brewers, and so they didn't own their own equipment, but rather used spare capacity at other large breweries. Many of their beers, of course, being brewed at the Brewery in Locriste near Ghent down in Belgium. But in Nuremberg in Copenhagen, they've got a collaborative beer bar with Mikkeller, which is called Mikkeller and Friends, and this bar has an exclusive bottle shop with over 40 different beers on tap. And they've also now got the Bruce Brew Pub in Copenhagen, which they opened in 2016 with Christian Gadian. And there's now a second Bruce bar up in Oslo as well. And these two brew pubs are part of the Toyo family, but they're essentially run independently. So the brewers and the chefs and things have creative freedom to kind of do what they like. But these guys are also co-owners in the various different Mikkeller and Friends venues, which now includes the bar in Reykjavik in Iceland, and also the bottle shop in Torvahallen in Copenhagen, which I do recommend you go and check out. But these guys also co-own the Coalship and Micropolis bars in Copenhagen. Coalship and Micropolis are very close to the original Mikkeller and Friends facility as well, if I remember correctly. But since 2017, Tore Gainter has been in sole charge of the company after Tobias Emil Jensen left to found the ETOH Spirits Company. I've never seen any of their stuff actually, so I'll need to look into that a little bit. But as of 2019, they've got a new production facility at Svinninge on Sjaelland, which, like I say, is out to the west of Roskilde and Copenhagen. And this has a 150,000 square metre floor space. So they have a clean side of the brewery, which has a large German Braukorn kit, and this side of the brewery is run by Tim, but there's also a sour side of the brewery with fodders and a Coalship for producing all the different sour beers, and this is run by Nathan Borg. But there's a lot of space for barrel aging there as well. Over the years they've continually built this up. There are a few other companies brewing in this facility now. There's a cider company there, but this whole facility used to be a former fruit packing plant, and Toyo have gone in, taken it over and done it up quite a lot. But a number of other breweries brew their beers at Toyo as well. I know that Mikkeller have brewed a number of things there, and a few, I think Omnipoyo have actually brewed a number of beers down at Toyo City as well, actually, because they've just got so much spare capacity. But they released the first beers from Toyo City in March of 2020, and they've been continuing to be quite prolific ever since then. But as of June 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced a little bit over 700 different kinds of beer, and as I said to you, they are very, very well rounded. Some of my favourite beers from Toyo include the Black Malts and Body Salts, or Black Salts and Body Malts, if I remember the name correctly. I think it was that. That's a lovely black double IPA, one of the best black IPAs I've ever had actually. First Frontier was always a really nice old school American beer, and Black Hole is a beautiful imperial stout as well. And if you can try anything from the from these guys that's like barley wine or anything, some of the big malty brown sugary beers that these guys do are very, very nice. One of the really old school West Coast IPAs, Dangerously Close to Stupid, was a great one as well. But yeah, that's everything I can really tell you about Toyo for the moment. Like I said, one of the first Danish craft brewers that I came across back at home in Scotland when I was just getting into craft beer, and they've never disappointed, I have to say. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the history section. So if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is a little bit different compared to what we've seen from Toyo before, but it still has a kind of similar vibe. It's a little bit more old school, this one, actually, when I think about it, having these old photographs and things on it. They used to have a lot of black and white labels back in the day. But there you can see the Toyo symbol on this one. Plain silver top on the can there. This is a 440 milliliter can, of course. And yeah, this beer, like I said, was released as part of the Lokalt Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for June of 2023. And it says, it doesn't say when this one was canned actually, but I think it is a fairly recent release. But when I had a little look on the Toyo website, they're saying that the Cryo Out Loud one, they've done this a few times actually, and I think they do it with different hops each time, but keep the same kind of base recipe. But basically they want to show off the best cryo hops at the time. So there's like Cryo Simcoe, Cryo Mosaic, I think it said Cryo Cascade in this one as well, of course. But yeah, 10.3% New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. This one cost 80 Swedish kroner, so that's somewhere in the region of, like, these days, €7, about £6.50 sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of like $8 American, something like that. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about. Very curious about this one. I actually can't remember when the last time I had a New England Hazy from Total was, but this is definitely one of the stronger ones that we've had from these guys. So let's do this. So I think that's enough in the glass for the moment, and we can put the rest in a wee bit later on. But yeah, it looks good, this one, and it's poured pretty much as you would expect of any sort of New England IPA. I think we've got about 3/4 of the beer in the glass just now. So before the head disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say, slightly cream coloured head there. There's some nice medium-sized bubbles sitting on top of the liquid there, and a few more foamy ones going up toward the top there, so you can have a little look at that. But it looks very, very nice. And you can see the colour of this one is a little bit more along the lines of like a bright mango juice or a mixed tropical fruit juice. I always like comparing the New England IPA's appearances to fruit juice, because that's just what they remind me of, really. But yeah, one or two little bits of carbonation sticking toward the side of the glass, one or two little tiny bits of sediment floating around as well. But overall, it does look very, very nice. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil plays a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrelation you do or adjuncts that you put into the beer will affect your colour as well. But when it comes to IPAs of pretty much any description, you don't often have to care about that. But yeah, this is definitely one of the more kind of bright yellow ones that I've come across. But when it comes to the stronger IPAs, you can expect a little bit more of a rich colour due to the sheer concentrations of malt and sugar and stuff in these things. But yeah, in terms of the level of haze in this beer, I would say this is not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England triples that I've come across, actually. So remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use as well. So yeah, that's definitely worth bearing in mind with these beers as well. But yeah, it looks pretty nice, I have to say. So nothing really untoward with this beer in terms of the appearance that it has, certainly in keeping with the style. So let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. This should be quite nice. Yeah, this does smell pretty damn nice, actually. Very, very rich in terms of its flavour. I think that's fair to say. So, on the hoppy side, well, overall, I'm going to say this is actually one of the sweeter New England IPAs that I've come across. But when it's a triple, you kind of expect it to have a wee bit of sweetness to balance it out a little bit more. But yeah, I would say it's got a lovely kind of bright, grassy and floral green component to it. The malty character in this one smells like quite thick, but also quite smooth and a little bit sweet. And yeah, on top of that, you've got a little bit of sweetness in there, as I say. You've got a little bit of a yeah, on this one it's quite interesting. There's one thing I should point out with these beers, when it comes to New England IPAs, for the malty and yeasty side of things, I think there's 6 elements to think about with this beer. So for me, you've got the kind of yeasty and farmhousey side of things coming out of this one. So you've got the yeasty farmhousey side of things. You've got the raggedy and grainy side, and these two elements are a little bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs, the likes of Alchemist and Hill Farmstead and stuff, because the style originally was a little bit more farmhousey and yeasty. But in the European ones, you have the kind of wheaty, bitey side of things, the barley malt bread, the oaty creaminess, and also the sweet side of things. So you get all 6 in American brewed New England IPAs, but it's a bit rarer in Europe to find the more kind of farmhousey and yeasty type ones, I would say. It's just because of the way the style's evolved over here. But yeah, for me, this one, It's kind of interesting. It's leaning more toward the wheaty and oaty side of things for me. There's a lot of oaty character coming out of this one, and a lot of a good little bit of wheatiness as well, particularly in the top of the nose. But let's break the aroma of this beer down a little bit and just describe it more in depth for you. So for me, the first thing that jumps out at this, we'll start off with the malt base as we always do. The backbone of this beer is a lovely sort of fresh hedgehog roll. Fresh sort of hedgehog roll. Kind of bread crust, and it's almost like it's got a little bit of the flour left on it, you know, like you've got it straight out of the bakery. Absolutely. There's a teeny little hint of woodiness in this beer, but not a lot, and a little bit of cracker too, but the bready characters are really dominant in this one, which makes sense when you consider that this is a more, just consider that it's a more powerful beer at 10.3% ABV. So yeah, on top of the bread crust and the cracker then, there's a little touch of kind of sweeter wholemeal brown bread in there, but then you have, then you've got the more, you've got the kind of fluffier white bread on top of that. You can smell the wheat just kind of densifying out the beer, and then you get the oaty notes in this one as well. So the oaty characters, I've always said in New England IPAs, can be a good indicator of how fresh your beer is. The creamier the oats are, the fresher the beer is. The drier they are, the older the beer is. That's a kind of basic, that's a basic summary of it. But that's what you get out of this one. This one, the oaty character in this one is actually pretty damn fresh and pretty smooth, I have to say. So this beer is in a pretty good condition, actually. That's fair to say. So lots of creamy oaty character in there, just a little touch of the drier note as well. The other thing I would say is that in the back of the nose you do get a little bit of wheaty bitiness out of this one, but the more you smell of the beer, the more sweetness and smoothness and stuff you get out of it. But the way it goes together, I think, is really quite nice. But yeah, on top of the oats, you do get a little touch of sweetness out of this one. There's a little bit of kind of Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type character out of the beer, and I think that does go together really quite nicely in a sense. But you get a little bit of that butterscotchy, butter candy, and there's a wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit too. So yeah, you're getting everything you'd expect out of this beer, and because it's a triple IPA, it is a little bit richer, which is absolutely fair enough to expect. But yeah, I think we can move on to the green component of the beer then, and the hoppy side of things. So for me, the green component in this beer is as you would expect. It's a little bit wetter actually, this one. It's got more of a kind of wet vibe to it. There's a little touch of earthiness in there, but not too much. You don't get much in the way of a kind of deep, dank character out of this one, but this tends to be the way of things with cryo oils, I would say. I've never really found them that deep and dank in the aroma, and of course the reason the green component is a little bit wetter is because the cryo oil is essentially like a chemical extraction of the useful chemicals out of the hops to put in beer. That's what you're essentially getting in this one. But yeah, there's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity in there, and you've also got a good little bit of grassiness. But as I say, the green component is very, very smooth in this one. I'd be very curious to know, in terms of brewing beers, if you have to think about the addition at the time at which you add in the cryo oil. So as I've said to you on many occasions before, there are 3 types of hoppings that you can use with IPAs. We'll use a 90-minute wort boil just to explain the model. Within the first hour of the wort boil, that is early addition hopping. That gives you mainly bitterness, and it will give you a deeper, danker aroma. You've got late addition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil. Give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. But then you also get a little bit of you do get a wee touch of the bitterness in there, but in the aroma that's going to give you a kind of brighter aroma. I would say then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort ball is complete, is all about flavour aroma, and again it gives you a bright aroma. New England IPAs tend to rely on late addition and dry hopping. West Coast IPAs use all three, which is why they smell deeper and danker. The deep and dank characters tend to dominate a little bit. But yeah, for me the green component in this one is very, very smooth. But let's look at the fruity side of things just to round off the aroma in this beer. So for me, it's got a little bit of there's quite a lot of tropical note to this one. I get a lot of kind of passion fruit out of it. Quite a very ripe and juicy mango, I would say. I would definitely go with that. Yeah, very ripe, juicy mango, smooth passion fruit underneath. There's a little bit of that kind of almost like datey, sultana-y type thing that you get from Cascade. Because it didn't say for sure what hops were in this one. It was saying that they use, it can have Simcoe, it can have Cascade and things like that. But there's something tells me there could be a few different things in this one as well. But yeah, as I say, very ripe, juicy mango, softer passion fruit, a little bit of apricot and things too. And then, yeah, there's also a little bit, there is a little touch of a kind of sweeter orangey note to this one. So there could be a bit of mosaic in there. Because it is more of a tangerine orange, and there's just a wee touch of a kind of sharper lemon and lime coming out of this beer too. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. Yeah, aroma-wise, this beer is very, very good. So a very juicy, kind of creamy smelling New England Triple, this one. But as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we try this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Cryo Out Loud, a New England Triple IPA at 10.3% ABV from Totul in Svinea on Sjaelland in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn good, I have to say. Now, I would say, in terms of the Totul New England Hazies, they've always been pretty solid, but they've always been pretty solid and pretty good, but they've never really kind of stood out and given me a punch in the face. Yeah, if you like me, think, well, damn, that's pretty outstanding. This one does. This is a really, really good New England Triple, I would say. This is probably the best hazy that I've had from Totul so far. This one is seriously well done. So I'm going to say big thumbs up to them on this. This beer, the other beers are always good. They're always damn solid, but this kind of just goes to the next gear, I would say. But yeah, first impression, lovely, smooth and creamy New England IPA. Because it's bigger in alcohol, it's got a higher in alcohol, brain isn't working. You've got a little bit more sweetness to it. It's got the lovely smooth green component and then lovely oily juicy fruit. So I always found that cryo hopping gives you a little bit more of an oily fruity character, which suits me. I like the more oily beers actually. But yeah, this is really good. So let's break this one down properly and just describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. But this is very, very good. So yeah. So, where do we start? Yeah, in terms of we'll go to the middle third of the palate first, as we always do. The backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready bread crust coming out of this one. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. Going further forward on that middle third of your palate, there's a little touch of woodiness in there. You do actually get a fair little touch of cracker out of this one, but because of the density of the malt base in this beer, it doesn't come out that much. You have to kind of search for that. But yeah, above the crackery character, you get a wee sort of thinner layer of a kind of wholemeal brown bready note, and that actually has a bit of sweetness to it. But then above that, you've got a fluffier white bready character, but the white bread in this beer, in fairness, I would say, still has quite a lot of density to it. So yeah, the density of the bread in this one is really, really nice, and as I say, you get more and more sweetness out of this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go. So like I say, in the beginning this beer is really quite sweet, but then the further back that you go with it, or the further into the aftertaste you go, you start to get more of the kind of white bready and wheaty notes out of the beer. So yeah, lovely dense white bready character in the middle, and then above that you can feel the wheat in that middle third of your palate, just sort of smoothing out and densifying the just smoothing out and densifying the whole beer actually, and that does go together very, very nicely. Yeah, it's awesome. It really is very nice how this goes together. So, yeah, on top of the wheaty layer then, you start to get the oats. And the oats in this beer are really creamy, so I mean, you can tell this beer is pretty damn fresh actually, which is good. Because that is an issue you get with things coming into Systembolaget, is they'll sit in the warehouse for a while before they're put out on the shelves. But anyway, in terms of the oaty side of things then, so if you've got a kind of circle in the middle of your palate, and you'll feel the nice kind of creamy oaty character in there. It's really thick and really dense actually, and as you move further out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, you do get a little touch of dryness out of this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, lovely little bit of kind of dryness and stuff in this one. Just a little. There's only a very slight touch of that as well. But on top of the oaty layer in that dead centre of the palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing out of this one. And that is, of course, the concentration of alcohols, which understandably in a triple IPA is a little bit higher. But yeah, I think that covers the middle third of the palate in this beer. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in this one. You can feel a little bit of brown bready character underneath, but then you've got the white bready character on top of that, and then on the back third of the palate you've got similar flavours to what you do in the middle third of the palate, but as I always say, they come out in different intensities. But remember, generally speaking, with beer in the palate, the more bitter and dry flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward, so it's essential to bear that in mind. But yeah, the back third of the palate then, you've got a little bit of that fresh white bready bread crust, and there it feels a little bit drier. You've got the wee touch of Jacob's cream cracker on top of that, then the wholemeal brown bread, which feels a little bit lighter and a wee bit more airy, and then above that you have the you've got the more fluffy white bready layer, which again feels really light and airy. And on top of everything else, you get the wheat in there, and it has a bit of smoothness initially, but then you start to get the real bitiness coming out of the wheat, which I think is really good. So yeah, the beer in this, the wheatiness in the beer here does give you a really nice bitey note into the aftertaste. But yeah, I really like how this kind of pieces together. So on top of everything else, then on the back third of your palate, above everything else, you get some of the yeasty note in this beer, and it's got quite a dense, kind of doughy, farmhousey type bread, but yeah, it's quite a thick, yeasty kind of character. There's a little bit of crackeriness, a little bit of woodiness and stuff to it, but then this doughy, yeasty character is just wrapped in a little bit of honeycomb. I always get honeycomb on the back third of the palate for some reason, but yeah, the way it goes together is quite nice. But yeah, the back third of the palate then, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down a little bit and squashes together. But I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. Let's look at the hoppy side of things then. So as I said earlier, the hoppy character in this beer really is very, very smooth, and that's something to be expected when you have cryo oil involved. But in the back corners of the palate, I do get a little touch of earthiness, but as you come further forward, you do get an element of deeper, danker character out of this one, but as you reach the front corners of the palate, it is more floral and aromatic, and it's a wee bit spicy as well, actually. You do get a little bit of that spicy character in there. And this beer does have a wee touch of bitterness to it, which is quite interesting, but that builds the further you go into the aftertaste. But round the front curve of the tongue, I think it is quite nice how that goes together. So yeah, you do get a nice little bit of floral and grassy type character out of this one. So yeah. So for me, the green component in this beer, it's a lot less kind of smooth and things than I thought it was going to be. From the aftertaste, it actually has a little bit more bitterness and kind of green to it than I was expecting. But I like that. I do like it when the beer has a little bit of that bitter side to balance out the sweetness, and that's even more essential in the big, heavier New England IPAs such as this one. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the green component. Let's go to the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you just get this little bit of bready build up in there. Kind of a little bit of sweet brown bread underneath, but the smoother white bread on top. The base of that front third of your palate, a little bit of bread crust, a little bit of cracker, kind of smooth and dense brown bread, and then a smoother white bread there too. But above that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. And again, I do really like how that pieces together. But yeah, the fruity side of things then, the oily bubble where you get all these fruity esters in there. Let's have a little look at that. So yeah, when you take the beer in, you've got this really nice, intense, fruity sweetness there. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, you get this quite intense, punchy passion fruit out of this one. I think it's going to be the Simcoe, because it comes in quite sharp and then it just mellows out a little bit. So you've got all that passion fruit there, but as you move, that's at the back of that front third of your palate. As you move further forward toward the middle, you've got a nice, ripe, juicy mango type note out of this one. It's almost got a little touch of guava to it, but yeah, I've always found guava as being a little bit more kind of green and things. But yeah, the way that goes together is really quite nice. Above that though, you get a little bit of an oily pineapple, a little bit of a drier apricot underneath, and then going further forward, you get a little bit more of as I say, you get a little bit more of a kind of, I would say, yeah, you get a little bit more of that sort of, you get a little bit more of a kind of citrusy note out of it there. So there's a little bit of an almost lemony character and a bit of a lime. I'm just trying to see if I wonder if there's a little bit of mosaic in this as well. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of citra, there's a little bit of Cryo, mosaic in this one. That would explain the earthiness. But yeah, you've got this nice kind of oily, zesty orange sitting on top of things there, but there is a wee touch of a lemony, limey character just behind the very front tip of your tongue. So for me, the fruit's mainly soft, like a bit of a pungent passion fruit, quite ripe mango, and then a kind of more zesty, oily, orangey character. But it works. It does work very, very nicely. Yeah, awesome stuff. I think that covers everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer. And again, the fruits are really nice and oily because it's the Cryo oil that's been used in this one. But yeah, really solid New England triple IPA. This one, it gets a little bit more wheaty, I think, the further into the aftertaste you go, but still very slick. So, mouthfeel wise, this beer for me, I would say bottom end full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth in this. Like I say, it has creaminess to it, but because it's the Cryo oil, I find this one has a bit more of an oily and slick character, but it suits the overall vibe of the beer. The malt base, as we said, has a wee bit of dryness underneath, a smooth bit in the middle, which has a good bit of density to it, and then a little bit of a sweetness on top there, but not too much sweetness. It actually balances itself out very well, which is one of the difficult things with the triple IPA. In fact, in terms of the IBU, what are we going to say about this? I think it's maybe about 40-ish IBUs, this one. Yeah, this one isn't too high in terms of its IBUs, although the bitterness, in fairness, does build the further you go into the aftertaste. So there's a wee bit more bitterness out of this one the further into the aftertaste that you go, which is nice. and then you've also got that lovely big kind of oily, juicy, fruity character coming out of the beer as well. It's a very oily, fruity note you get. There's some quite balance between the tropical notes and the more oily, zesty kind of ones. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice, and it gets a big thumbs up from me actually. So yeah, a really enjoyable New England triple, this one. I'm going to go away and sip the rest of this now, because I can feel this one going to my head a little bit, but at 10.3%, that's not really a big surprise, to be honest with you. But really enjoyed this one, and I can see why people would like it. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Cryo Out Loud, a 10.3% New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Total in Svinninge on Sjaelland in Denmark. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Total as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Sjaelland, Scott, cheers, check out my social media, check out Total's social media, try some of the beers, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very shortly. Ciao just now.